Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. In today's episode, I have Brandon Applegate, and we're going to be talking about what is horror and all things that fall under that very big question.
It's a big question.
It's a big question.
Yeah, very wide. Well, this all stemmed off of a Twitter conversation that we had, right?
Yeah.
No, it was a good one because we were talking about. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember the very specifics of the exact Twitter conversation, but it was really more about like what is scary to certain people and what is the the sort of Anyway, no, I'll let you go.
So you were posting about we were talking about I think we were talking about Ganjiam, maybe.
Yeah,
or maybe it was one of the other found footage. Some things I think we were talking.
Oh wait, it was Noroi and it was Lake Mungo.
That's the one, and a lot, and there's that weird pull for people for Lake Mungo. Of some people really just like I like love it, and then other people are like I don't understand why everybody loves this movie, and that's kind of like where that conversation came from was like, well, yeah, but some people just don't, different things for different people. So that's kind of where it started. And I was like, hey, let's do an episode about that.
Lake Mungo is such a brilliant example of this because it fakes you out and then it does it again. It's like it's a double fake out because for the first, I don't know, half of the movie, you spend so much time with these characters, getting to know them and getting to understand and literally almost nothing happens until they start showing you all these photos. Oh man, this thing was happening the whole time. It's like, it was always there and I didn't even see it. And then the one that anyway, I could get further into it, but and then it stops and goes, wait a minute, none of this stuff was real. Spoiler alert. And then into the movie, it's real again. Like I love Lake Mungo for that. I love it for that because it just jerks you all around.
Yeah, it does. And I think I had never seen it, but it was on Joshua Marcella's 5 Influential Horror. And so I was like, well, I watched any conversation I had with anybody about their top fives or anything like that. I always watch whatever those movies are. Otherwise, I'm not going to have much to contribute. And at first I was like, okay, so it's kind of found footagey, but it's done like a documentary. And I was like, I kind of dig this. And then I ended up loving it. Like I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so well done. And like you said, you get so invested in the characters. And I think you were even talking about like how emotional, like you feel when you're watching the story unfold. And it is crazy.
I have trouble not tearing up. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but oh my God, that movie is just such a, it's such a heart wrencher. Oh my God.
It is. It's a roller coaster ride for sure.
Yeah.
And you want answers for them, and you feel like you almost feel like you're grieving the loss with them. You feel like you're going through this process with them as if you were part of this family. And it's captivating. I loved it.
Oh, I totally agree. But I think that's why it's so good for this conversation that we were having, because because the conversation was, well, the one that we started was so Lake Mungo is scary to us. We love this movie. It's scary. It's heart-wrenching. It's terrifying. There's a whole contingent of folks out there, and there's a ton of different pieces of media that are like this. Like I saw a conversation about the yellow wallpaper on Twitter again at one point, where that story was, scary for some, not for others. Scariest thing ever for some people. For other people, it's like, it's fine, whatever. And so it was back when that conversation about the yellow wallpaper happened that I got to thinking about this thing that we wanted to talk about tonight. And then the thing with Lake Mungo came up and we started talking about it. And it was this idea that horror works best when it's an exercise in empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the idea that not every single horror movie that you watch, not every single horror story that you read can be, or even really should be, a story about somebody just like you. So the idea that you have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes in order to kind of make the horror effective for yourself, I think is one of the most attractive things about the genre to me, kind of in general.
I am in my conversation with Rhonda Garcia. we talked about like she kept saying, and I think this is so beautifully put, she kept saying that at the baseline they're human stories, and so it makes it, and it's not always easy to make somebody feel what you want them to feel, whether you're talking about, and that's any genre. But I feel like when it's done right in horror, it's just one of those things that like lingers under your skin. Like Lake Mungo, just because we've already talked about it being the example, like that movie sat with me the rest of the night. Like, I mean, I thought about that one for, I don't even know how long after I saw it. And it just, and it's because of that. It's because of that ability to connect on that emotional level outside of jump scares or gore or, you know, whatever. And that's what makes, like, my favorite type of horror is horror about people. And I think that's like one of the best things. I agree. I think that's one of the best things about the genre. Its ability to do that. Take whatever the circumstance is and make it relevant to you in some way or another.
Oh, completely. Yeah. And sometimes you have to go do a little bit of the work yourself, right? Sometimes you have sometimes you have to go like, what if I was that person? What if I was like that person? And I think that's a kind of a unique superpower that horror has, is the ability to make it really, in a lot of situations, it cannot be effective unless you do the work of imagining what it would be like to be somebody else.
I agree.
Yeah, like Mungo hit me like that. Probably the book that hit me like this the most was Paul Tremblay's A Head Full of Ghosts. Have you ever read that one?
I haven't.
Oh, holy smokes! Do not let me ruin that for you. But that is seriously. I will not. I won't say anything. But oh man, if you ever get a chance to read that, like, okay. So my whole thing, like, I wanted to be a horror writer for a long time, but really my only influences were like the big 2 or 3s, like Stephen King, a little bit of Clive Barker, a little bit, you know, the people who were big and still are big, but in like the 90s and stuff like that when I was little and learning how to read and stealing my mom's books and all that stuff. And it wasn't until, I guess it was in my 20s, and it was around the time that my first daughter was born that I started picking up. I actually started getting kind of tired of Stephen King, and it was funny because it was just like, you know, it's literally one guy's perspective all the time, and his perspective hit me where I lived, but you know, that's
right. That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And so I started branching out a little bit, and Paul Tremblay was one of the people that popped up, and I branched out quite a bit more now. Thank goodness, not all of them are just white guys anymore. But
yes, that's very true.
But Paul is one of the people that I picked up when I first started branching out, and A Head Full of Ghosts hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, holy crap, I have to write something. And that was like one of the first time that a book had ever actually done that to me. And it's that same,
an anthology or just a novel?
It's a novel, and it centers around, and it's a little bit, it is actually kind of a found footage like novel, which, by the way, found footage kind of is kind of my jam, by the way, if you can't tell.
That's my favorite subgenre. Huge fan of found footage. I was just talking to somebody earlier today about the fact that, like, I'm so open to other people's perspectives on everything else in the genre except found footage. I have such a hard time.
Well, I love found footage because I think found footage does this wonderful job of doing exactly what you're talking about, which is putting you in the shoes of somebody else, very literally.
Yes.
But A Head Full of Ghosts is a found footage, or really kind of epistolary, I guess is the word for it. Because it starts with, and like I said, will not ruin this for you. I'll just give you the book.
I'm gonna definitely look into it. You had me. It's kind of like found footage. I was like,
So it basically centers on a family who has 2 daughters. It's a father, a mother, and 2 daughters. One of the daughters is little. The other one's much older. Is like a teenager, maybe 16 to 18, somewhere. And they become convinced, or at least the dad becomes convinced, that the oldest daughter is possessed by a demon.
Oh, okay.
And so the question is, it's a little bit of an unreliable narrator slash found footage thing, because the question is always, is she or isn't she?
But for yeah,
Is it real? Is it not real? Is she playing them? Like what's going on? And
yeah,
he brings in this priest who is going to help them, and the priest brings in a film crew because they're going to make a show about it. And it's this awful thing about these people that are like capitalizing on this situation, but it's
yeah,
also
sure.
and some of it comes from the youngest daughter's perspective, and
Oh,
it's just so heart-wrenching because of how much she loves her sister and how much she loves her family,
oh,
and this terrific conflict between these people. And
yeah.
I will go no further.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It's a gorgeous book. It's a gorgeous book. Read it whenever you get the opportunity.
Yeah, those are all things that are on my little checklist. Like I like anything that
Yeah.
has to do with religious themes. I like anything that has to do with demonic possession.
Oh,
I
dude.
love anything that's found footage. I love like that hits like so many notes for me. I'm definitely gonna have to look into it now. Yeah, I'm not like as big a reader as like a lot of the people that I kind of share stuff and interact with. I mean, like I always tell Steve all the time, I'm like, I don't know how you have time to read all of these things. Like I barely have time to exist. Like I don't
Yeah.
know how you do it. And so it wasn't until like the end of last year when I started interacting with like Joshua Marcella, Luther
Yeah.
Cross, like I started meeting people and I
Yeah.
was like, well, I want to help support these people. And that's kind of when so I'm still in the process of like getting used to reading on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but no, that sounds like something I'm probably going to absolutely be smitten with. I love that. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, and we both have 3-year-olds, so I definitely get the whole I don't have time to read thing. I think I get maybe 3 hours a night to do anything. So it's either write, read, spend time with
Yeah.
my wife, or that's about it.
Maybe sometimes eat dinner and shower. Like those are all things.
If we're lucky. If we're lucky.
Yeah, that stuff falls. You're like, well, I could take a shower or I could do this other thing that I'd rather do that I don't get time to do either. So it's like yeah.
And I do have a thing for family and parent horror. I mean, you read my book, so yeah, that's in there.
Yes.
But
Yes. I even put it up so we could see it while we talk.
I know, you're so kind. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm an advocate. I loved it. I the first one I read in it was the one what was the one that you sent me?
Tea Party.
Tea Party.
Yeah.
So that was I read that one first.
Yeah.
And then I was like, holy shit. I was like, I need to read the rest of these. So then I ended up reading the rest of them not long after that, because I was like, I really loved that. And so and because I feel that way, I'm like even more intrigued to read this other book that you're talking about where you're like Head Full of Ghosts, where you're like, that made me like want to write stuff. I'm like, well, now I feel like I really need to read it because no, I did. I loved it. I'm a huge advocate for it. So I was like,
cool. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
Yeah.
But I mean that so parenting stuff hits me hard, obviously.
Yes.
Because just based on the content of that. But
yeah,
there's so many good works that I've seen recently that you have to that I have had to exercise that level of empathy for. Find areas that are the same between myself and the character who's experiencing the horror, and then use that to bridge over into, if I was that man or if I was that woman in that situation.
I can see that. Yeah.
His House was one. Did you watch that on Netflix? Oh my God.
I loved that one.
I
loved that movie so much. I think I did a review on it for the social medias. I think
Mm-hmm.
I really loved that one a lot. And that was not a plight that I could understand in an everyday situation, but that was one that lingered. That one really lingered.
They illustrated it so well that it was you could not help but see that point. Like they hit that they hit that empathy note hard.
Yeah.
I think the ones that get the most get the most flack, for lack of a better term, though, are the slow builds, though, right? Like Lake Mungo's that slow build. One that I loved and was a slow build and also an empathy exercise for me, but was a great movie. It was called I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. It's another Netflix film.
Very slow.
Very slow.
that was one that I almost gave up on.
Okay.
And I really did, because I actually don't mind slow builds, but I think for me, I fall on that line of in between, not being able to tolerate them sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But I try best practices to finish it anyway, just to see. But the payoff for that one was worth it.
Right.
And that's one of those things where that's what slow builds are about. They're about these things where, like, sometimes you may, even if you love something, you might go, "What? I don't really know why I'm watching this," or "I don't really know
Right.
why I like this." And then it's like the end, or, it builds into this ending, and you get this like moment of like, I still don't know why I like it, but I loved it. Like, it's just kind of like, yeah, no, I have seen that one. I think I saw that one when it first came out, because it showed up like on the top screen or something. And I was like, oh, what's this? I did like
Yeah.
that one though. It is
Well,
very slow.
they have such wonderful they have such wonderful marketing imagery for that movie, but at the same time, the marketing imagery makes it look like it's going to be this really freaky, just kind of from the start. That's the whole thing. And there's only and that movie is like an exercise in restraint. It's nothing but just little tiny moments. Just okay, there was something, and then the rest of it's just her being annoyed about being there, and then
yeah. It's some, I wish there was like another word besides subtle, because it is subtle, but it's like, it's whatever is like above subtle. Like, it's whatever that like,
it's just little blips.
Yeah. And you're right. The art does kind of make you think. And even when you read the description, it paints a very different picture than its storytelling gives you. But yeah, that one was good.
This is a good question, or this is a good point though, about the marketing material and what it makes you think, because I think part of the problem often is that people don't, and when I say people, I mean the people in the marketing departments and the people who are putting these movies out, don't always know how to market a slow build film.
That's probably fair. Yeah.
So you're going to end up with a whole lot of people who don't like slow build movies watching a slow build movie and going, "What is this?
I hate this." Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And I think too, it's like one of the other things, like talking about marketing, is like one of my least favorite things that they do a lot now is everything that's scary is in the trailer.
Oh, yes.
So it kind of like, it like paints the picture that the story is crazier than it is.
Yeah.
But you also are seeing like all of the good stuff, like the stuff that a lot of those like people with mainstream horror, like who really want those jump scares, who really want those crazy sequences, like, well, you saw them all already.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so there's no surprise in that horror experience, because you've already seen all the kills or the bites from the monsters, or I don't know, whatever, and I hate that so much, because they did that a lot with, I actually really like the Insidious franchise. I really like that one a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a family one, I think, is part of the reason. I just get so invested in those characters. But like for what was the fourth one called? The Last Key, the Final Key, something with key.
Oh yeah. I can't
That
remember.
one was really good. But I had to literally make myself not watch the trailer, because I had already heard from other people that the trailer had like all the crazy stuff in it. And I was like, that's so obnoxious. I hate that. So,
oh man, I find myself avoiding trailers a lot these days, just because they're gonna pull every switch they can to get you into the theater or into the room with streaming, and so if you avoid the trailer, you're probably going to avoid 90% of what you wanted to see. That's true. Yeah, almost every time. No, scary movies are notorious for that. But
they're really bad.
Yeah.
And it takes like away, like, so one of the things that that is not like, so when talking about things that mean that like represent horror for me, like one of the things is that I tried to watch this movie called Satan's, I can't remember, it's either a Korean or a Japanese movie.
Oh no, what's it called again?
Satan's Slaves.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, sounds super intense, right?
It does. It sounds like some extreme horror stuff.
So Dread Central is a, I don't know if you're familiar. They're like a horror magazine. They share a bunch of stuff on social media. But I've come to learn that when they overshare movies, a lot of times I'm not going to like them.
Oh, okay. Well,
like,
hey, we all have publications that kind of speak to our taste, right? Like, I
yes,
get it.
and I think like the people who write a lot of their articles, because they use a couple of the same people for a lot of them. It's like
Yeah,
their taste does not mesh with mine. And this was
yeah,
one that one of their female writers had written an article about, and like she talked about like how great it was and all these things,
yeah.
but it is nothing but jump scares. Like, and I mean literally
Oh,
nothing. There's no build up, there's no atmosphere. You don't even get time to, I don't know, like get connected to the family or the story about like, because
yeah,
the short story is that it's about the mother of this like family of like 4 or 5. She's been really sick for like a really, really long time.
yeah,
And they're pretty sure she's going to die. And they're not doing really well financially. And like one of the sons sold his bike to give money. And like, it's this whole little trouble thing.
yeah,
But all of that is only like a 3-minute part. And then it's jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, literally for 2 hours. And
yeah.
I hate jump scares. Like they're like not effective. I mean, they're effective. They definitely make me jump, but they don't linger. They're not meaningful. They don't exist after there happens. Like you just
Right.
keep moving on. And I hate jump scares. That's like my least favorite thing that they do in horror movies. Cause it's not, to me, it's not horror if it's just cheap jump scares,
Well, okay, so now we're back to the title of the thing, right? What is horror? Because that's it, right? So the jump scares thing is interesting. I
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with jump scares, but you're right about it just being this momentary thing that
Yeah.
just happens in the moment and it has no bearing on future events. Like,
Yeah.
I think that horror almost, because it's an exercise in empathy and because you have to connect with these people
Yeah.
and feel on their behalf in order to actually
Mhm.
be scared on their behalf, you have to be
Right.
able to feel other feelings on their behalf too, joy, sadness, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so,
Whatever. Yeah. Right.
and the way that you described that movie was very interesting. I haven't seen it, but the way that you describe it was very interesting to me because it's like there's two movies. There's that first 3 minutes where you get to know everybody,
Yes. Yes.
and then the rest of the movie is just what can we make pop out of a cupboard,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
dislike movies. I also dislike movies like that because to me, horror has to be like the whole movie is about getting to know the people. It's if it's a two
Right.
hour movie, 2 hours of that movie are getting to know these people.
Yes. Yes.
And the horror really, because almost every horror movie that you see is going to have somebody in an unfortunate situation, right? Maybe
Of
they're
course. That's
poor,
the
maybe
name
they're
of the
moving,
game. Yeah.
maybe or maybe it's a good situation like the Amityville horror where they're happy as a family and they're moving into a new house,
Yeah.
but there's like problems under the surface that we don't know about
Yes.
yet, right? Like
Not yet.
George Letts
Right.
is kind of a jerk and like all these
Sure.
things. And I say that I know George Letts is a real man, but I think he probably is kind of a jerk because they lied about everything. But yeah, that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah.
but
When you do that kind of stuff and you involve your children, I'm kind of like, yeah, I can't.
yeah, maybe don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, uh,
Agreed.
yeah, but there are these problems under the surface that you don't know about, and
Yeah.
what the supernatural horror element of it, if it's supernatural or if it's like a
Right.
murderer or a stalker, if you're talking about more
Either
thriller
way.
kind of horror, any kind of like that. Uh,
Yeah.
that what it does is it exacerbates the existing problem
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it forces it to come to a conclusion
Yeah.
as opposed to just dragging out over the like this is not like a dramatic film where we're just going to let that problem drag for the whole 2
Right.
hours and probably not resolve it, right?
Sure.
It's a catharsis in that it brings the whole thing to a head, I think.
Yes. To me, this is an obscure one because I'd never heard of it until somebody mentioned it. But
Yeah.
there's this movie called, let's see if I get it right on the first try. Mumsy, Nanny, Sonny, and Girly. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, but I want to know about it.
So, it's very, I don't know that it's a slow build. I don't know that I would call it that. But one of the things that makes it it's essentially about this well-to-do family that kidnaps the forgotten people that they find. and makes them pretend to be this like perfect little family. And then if they don't go along with whatever they say, their deaths are usually a result of something of like a childlike game. Like, so the way that they do things is like little games or whatever. But I really liked the film a lot, but I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why if my life depended on it. I was so intrigued by it. And the way that I described it after I had seen it was, it kind of reminds me of like a higher society Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You've got this like batshit crazy family, and they they do these things. But in this movie, in the Mumsy one, they are just so proper and very well groomed, and their house is this. But the building that they filmed in, I say all of that to say, is very interesting, because there are parts of it, the part of the house, like the inside and the outside, the whole thing, that are very like manicured and pristine and very just very luxury looking, I guess. And then there are these moments where you get these flashes of places within the house, or rooms within the house rather, that are broken and decrepit. And it's the same on the outside. The yard, there's parts of the yard that look like it's got an abandoned building that hadn't been touched in 150 years or whatever. And it plays into the way you kind of flow through the story of these ups and downs with this family. And it just goes to show you like how much of that plays into what is horror when you're watching a movie, because those things, like, anybody who's seen The Shining that doesn't know that, because I didn't know. I thought I knew a lot about that movie, but I did not know any of those things. And but it's like things that you don't know, but even though you don't know them, they affect you. And it's really crazy to think about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would be curious. I'm going to go watch that movie after this. So I'm going to need you to message me the name of that movie, because it's kind of long.
I will. And I think it's streaming. I'll message you where it's streaming to.
All right. Yeah. Let me know, because I want to watch that, because I have a couple of questions that I want to watch and see if I can see, because first one is like, how quickly in that storyline do you know, or is it like the big reveal that this family isn't really a family, right? They're kidnapped and stuck together, and like, is that like a big reveal, or is that kind of early?
No, it starts out with the siblings. There's a brother and a sister, which is Sunny and Girly. They go and find somebody and bring this person home to their house, to their mom and the nanny. And that person is killed like right away.
Because like did not adapt well.
No, he didn't want to play their little childish BS games and act like this and follow the rules of the house and like play these things. And so that all happens in the first like 20 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
So it's not a reveal.
Okay. That's interesting, because the way that you describe the idea of parts of the house being super pristine and other parts of it being decrepit and broken down reminds me of like a set or a play, even, where it's like, the backside of the set is just 2x4s and crap. The front of the set looks great,
Visually, I got it.
It's pretty cool.
It's really interesting to watch.
Along those same lines, you brought up the TV show The Haunting of Hill House, and I'm a huge proponent of that show. I don't know if you are. I know that it is a polarizing show. There's a lot of people who are like, I hate that show, and I never quite got that.
I liked that one, but I didn't have any I didn't have any like source material for it. I just watched it.
Well, and I don't really feel like you need the source material that badly. It's more of an adaptation than anything else. But what I honestly, my favorite part of the show, and I love the storyline with Nell and the Bentnet girl. That whole thing it hit me pretty hard on an emotional level. But the other part of it that is visually really it's unsettling to me, is that throughout that whole show, there's like this ridiculous number of hidden ghosts that are just kind of standing in corners and under staircases,
peeking out of stuff,
in shadows, and peeking out of stuff. I was obsessed with that. I think I watched that show like 3 times just trying to spot every ghost. Oh my god! I loved it, but it was that's a perfect example of how you can use an environment. I'm so as a writer, I am incredibly jealous of film for two reasons. First
Yeah.
reason is because you can't use music in a book. And I always want music makes it easy, so much easier to build a mood.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and the second reason I'm so jealous of movies is because I can't do that. Like I get if I'm writing a short story, I can't like hide things in the environment and you have to tell people it's there or else it's just not there, right?
It doesn't exist. Yes, that's so true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can't just say it's hidden. It's not hidden to the reader anymore once you point it out. Yeah.
If I wanted to pull a Kubrick and put a window where there wasn't supposed to be a window, I would literally have to have a character go, is there supposed to be a window there? Like it's
that's so true. Yeah. But I think that's kind of what makes horror like books and stuff, especially with me trying to get more into them again. Is like that's kind of what makes them so impressive, is like thinking about the whispers and the things that are kind of like these little subtlety, and I guess I'll use Tea Party as an example. Fun fact for those of you watching / listening, I read this on my Spooky Saturday Stories. So go listen to the podcast.
And did awesomely. I loved it.
Oh, could you? I think you were. Didn't you say? I think it was you that said it. You were like, "Yeah, I could tell you kind of got into it."
Yeah, I did. I could tell you were enjoying yourself.
Yeah, I was. I loved it. But like you have, especially with that specific story, it's like, because, well, and I don't want to talk about the other ones. I want people to go buy the book and read it. But it's like when I'm reading through that story, there are all of these like little notions, and I think that's kind of, it does the same thing. It's just done in a different way because you're reading it versus seeing it on a screen. But it's like, you know, the little things that she says as they're in the process of going, and like just these, like, I don't know, these moments of like, even the thing about the dad saying he says something or thinks something to the effect of like, he almost lost her. And he has these like just these little moments of things. And that's kind of like, but to be able to do that in written format and make it effective is impressive in my opinion, because I think it is a lot easier to do it in film because you have the visuals already there. You're not leaving it up to words and the reader's imagination.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's very kind of you. Thank you. That's one of my favorites, Tea Party, and that one, and well, I mean, I like all the stories in my book. Like I'm one of those people. Like I know a lot of writers, and this is a perfectly okay position to take as well, who are just like, I read a story and I don't want to read it anymore. Like,
I've heard people say that too.
And I totally get that. But I'm one of those jerks who's like, I'll read one of my stories periodically, just once in a while. I'm not like always reading my stuff, like look
just constantly walking.
But once in a while, I'll go back and read one, and I'm like, that turned out pretty good. I like this.
I think if I were a writer, that's how I would be. Because full disclosure, I definitely listen to my podcast episodes and or watch my episodes. And mostly because sometimes, especially when I do them pretty far in advance, I don't always remember the conversations or what was said or how I felt or whatever. But I would be the same way. Like we did for the month of October last year, I did special effects looks for every video for the month. Yeah. And the big final one that we did that my editor / friend Mike did, he did phenomenal. Like it would not have turned out as great if it had not been for him. But his filming and the production value, we did a Carrie video is what we did. Yeah. So we did nice. The senior prom background, and I wore a wig that gave me like a migraine the next day. Like it turned out like I watched the blood drop scene probably 100 times. And I was so proud of that because we put so much into that. Like that video was months in the making. So I feel like I would be the same way if I was an author. I'd be like, I worked really hard on that. But I think I feel like this one's so cliche to say, but it is what it is. But I saw the 2021 Candyman. I went and saw that one in theaters. And that is a movie.
Which I've not seen that yet, and I need to, but
oh my gosh. I won't ruin anything, I promise. It's super, Super well done. Very 90s horror. I loved it. But I will
Yeah.
say that like its message is so like relevant to like now, and watching it, like there's a sequence of and the credit scenes, they do these like
Yeah.
little, this doesn't ruin anything, they do like these little puppet scenes, which they've showed
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
in the trailer. They show the little so
Yeah.
but anyway, they do but they're scenes from like other things that have happened to like black children or other
Mm.
black families, or but it's all in puppets. And I
Yeah.
left with this just like heavy like feeling on my heart. Like I left feeling so moved and heartbroken at the same time. Like it was so
Yeah.
beautifully done. And I think that like statement pieces in horror are so much harder to like nail for me. And I
Yeah.
think that like that's one of the things that like I'll be honest, I don't even remember why I started talking about this. I've totally lost like my point. But whatever it was, I'm sure it was a valid one. but
Well, no,
but no,
no,
like
but I'm with you, because statement horror is difficult to pull off,
yes.
because oh, I'll give you a personal example,
Yeah.
and I promise I'm not like trying to continue to bring the conversation back to my book, but it was kind of a big deal when I put it out there, and it's got a lot of stuff. There's still a
No.
lot of it in my head.
No, yeah.
There's one story in the book. It's called The Creature, and it's kind of towards the end, and it's flash, so it almost feels like a little bit of a throwaway. But what's interesting about that story is I tend to feel like I don't make points when I don't on purpose
Okay.
make points.
Okay.
Uh, when I write, or when I write horror, and I think a lot of horror movies operate this way, like,
Yeah.
The Thing is just trying to make a monster movie, but there's so much more to it.
Oh, there's a
There's
lot more to that one.
yeah, so many movies are like that, where you can take them either way. And John Carpenter didn't even want to be a horror film a horror director.
Yeah.
So those movies are kind of this personal expression piece, the or pieces that he does. But
Yeah.
I'll get to my point. The
We make a great pair on camera.
Oh yeah, if anybody's still following us, you're my people. That's it. But my point here is that I don't intentionally make points. I
Okay.
just write what I'm feeling and what's in my head, and
Okay.
the story that I want to write. And sometimes stuff comes out that is
Mm,
like, oh yeah, I didn't even see that there, but somebody else pointed it out to me. And
yeah.
the Creature is one of those stories, because
Okay.
I was literally just writing a story about a guy and sorry if you haven't read my book, I'm going to spoil one little flash fiction story in it. But it's about a guy who like read some magic words in a book and accidentally created an evil doppelganger of himself, and that guy
Yeah.
and the doppelganger found him at his house. Like that
Right.
was
Yeah.
the whole scene I was trying to set. It was it was very surface level. This is the story I'm trying to tell.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then at the time when I first wrote it, that was first published by a little publication on Medium, because I was writing almost entirely on Medium at the time. I would just crank out a draft and throw it. And
Yeah.
that publication that I sent it to on Medium, they tag it. They have categories, and they tagged it
Oh.
as mental health horror. And I was like, okay, what do you mean by mental health horror? And I had to dig into it a little bit, and I was like, yeah, this is like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, where it's like, is there actually a doppelganger of this guy, or is he
Or
actually
is it?
afraid of the horrible things that he does? And
Hmm.
so I've had more than one person tell me that that's what that story is about to them. And to me, it was just very much a surface level thing. But at the time, I was having a ton of dad anxiety, a ton of husband anxiety. Like
Yeah.
that's what most of that book is about. So it makes perfect sense that the
Yeah.
story would also be about that.
That's
But I
how
had
it,
no
yeah.
idea at the time.
Well, and I think that's a good point though, because that's when talking about things like what is horror or talking about like genres and subgenres that people love, it's like it doesn't, you could take the same movie and show it to 10 people and they're all going to say different things. You can do the
Yeah.
same thing with a short story, a novel, any piece of anything like that.
Mhm.
And no one looks at it the same way. So I do every other Saturday, I do horror bestie breakdown with my friend Tasha, and we
Yeah.
break down like newer horror. We literally like just started doing this. This has been so much fun. And we do not under any circumstances watch horror in the same way. Like she's like, I hated this character. And I'm like, I love them. And she's like, I didn't like this. And I'm like, that was perfect. Like it just,
Those are the best people to watch horror with, though. Like
yes, because you're
I
watching it from these very different
yeah.
perspectives. And that's kind of the beauty of it too, is like a lot, like you had said earlier, people look at people in the horror genre and they have these opinions. And I've talked about this before, but I had a coworker that was very very judgmental about, like, he came in my office and saw that I was decorated for Halloween, and he was like, oh, is Halloween your thing? And I'm like, well, I kind of horror is kind of like my thing. And he was like,
I
oh,
mean,
I
is
didn't think
Halloween like not your thing? Like, do you hate
I
candy
know,
and
like
fun? Like, what the heck's going
right? And it was
on?
just this weird conversation where I could tell within that
Yeah,
like 60 seconds, he had like made up
yeah,
his mind that I was weird, like, and it's like, and he made the comment, he was like, I wouldn't have suspected that. And I'm a little blunt. So I was like, well, you don't really know me. So I don't know what you were expecting, but it takes a
yeah.
5-minute conversation and that this is like my heart, like, and so,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
mean,
very true that that's generally what happens. But one of the best things about the horror genre is how it
yeah.
speaks to so many different people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I mean, and imagine somebody, and I imagine this has got to be something that is meaningful for writers in general. But imagine, like, somebody reading Creature
Yeah,
and getting something out of it and coming to this like self-realization, or like because they read something that translated like that for them, now
right.
they are able to come out of their whatever fog or think about things a little bit differently. And that's kind of
Yeah.
something that I feel like horror does really well, is it brings
Horror,
out these different things. Yeah.
horror is so personal, and it's such a Rorschach
Yes.
test for both the
Yeah.
person writing it and for the person reading it or watching it. Uh, it, it
Yes.
I mean, Rorschach test is the best possible term I can come up with for it,
No,
because it
I think
literally,
that's perfect.
you get out of it what you bring to it every time.
Every
And
single time, 100%.
if you're bringing empathy
Yeah.
to it and you watch a horror movie about somebody who is not like you will learn so much about yourself.
I
If you bring
know.
it, if you one of my favorite
Yeah.
people in the world to watch horror with, I have a like a, I think it's a standing Thursday or Friday. We kind of decide on Thursday whether it's going to be Thursday or Friday. With a,
Okay.
with a long time friend of mine. Like literally, I've known him since kindergarten,
Okay.
and we didn't know that the other person liked horror until I started writing horror stories. Like literally, like just a few
Oh,
years ago, and he was like, "I
yeah.
like horror movies," and I was like, "Yeah, I love horror movies too." And so now we have like a standing Thursday or Friday night watching horror movies, and he
That's
and I are
awesome. Yeah.
just wildly different in what we like. And like
Yeah.
we watched Hereditary the other night,
Mhm.
and I'd seen it before, he hadn't.
Okay.
And that's one of those movies that I have trouble with, because you've seen Hereditary, right? I like
Mhm.
it. It's a good movie. Everything before and after the car scene.
Yeah.
The car scene gives me it makes me very uncomfortable, which is the point of it. But
Sure.
it gives me a feeling that I don't like, like
Yeah.
it steps over a line for me. But
Mhm.
everything before the car scene is excellent family horror buildup. Everything
And
after everything after that scene to me, there's some wildly cool stuff that they do at the climax of that movie, like when
Yeah.
the mom is possessed and the son is upstairs in the attic and she's like banging on the attic door
On
and you
the
think she's
yeah,
just banging on it with her fist and then they cut out to it and she's like stuck to the ceiling
on the
banging it
bottom
with
of
her
it
head.
banging. Yeah.
Whoa, that's such a cool
Yeah.
image. But so
Yeah.
much of that is cool. So like I have this love-hate relationship with it where I love big chunks of it and I hate that one part.
Yeah.
And but he watched it with me and he was like, okay, well, I guess we can say we've seen that piece of crap. And I was
So
which
it's so
is,
funny.
yeah.
I don't think I can. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to escape A24 ever because it
Oh
doesn't
God.
matter who I'm talking to. It always comes up. And so
Do you
I do
dislike
not like,
A24 generally?
not at all. I didn't like The Witch. I didn't like It Comes at Night. I didn't like Hereditary. I didn't like
Yeah.
Midsummer. I didn't like, the list goes on. But
Yeah.
but at the same time, this is another one of those things though where like
Yeah.
I enjoyed talking to people who did love it because it gives me like I watched Midsummer, which I thought I was gonna jump off a bridge after I watched. It was like, but then I had a conversation with Tasha, that was one of her top picks for the first time that she and I ever
Yeah.
interacted. And she talked to me about some of her perspectives.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like going back and I'm thinking about these scenes in the movie and I'm thinking, okay, well, okay, so that does kind of have like, and I started to realize that there were parts of it that I really did enjoy. And I think having so many conversations about Hereditary, because that's like a big conversation piece. People love talking about that movie because
Oh
there's
yeah, yeah.
so much to talk about.
Oh,
And like,
it's a big film with a lot going on.
yeah. And people love to talk
Yeah,
about it. And,
totally
and
there
it
with you.
does seem to be one of those ones, though, where it's like the people who don't like it typically really hated it. It's like, it's very interesting. And I think that so many people have talked about it and given their perspectives. And it's just kind of like, I just kind of like sit back and I go, okay, I can appreciate that. Or I see what you're saying, or I did like that part. And it's like, so I kind
Yeah.
of like, I fall in between the two, but A24 is just the only A24 movie that I've ever seen that I liked,
Okay.
I actually loved, and it was Saint Maud. I don't know if you've seen that one.
It's on my list. It's on the it's we my buddy and I keep a list. There's like 90 something movies on it right now, but it keeps growing of the
Mhm.
movies that we're going to watch and we mark them out as we watch them and St. Maud's on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I highly recommend that one.
Okay.
That one is super good.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of there's another A24 movie that I watched that wasn't awful, but I honestly I can't remember because I think I thought for a long time that It Follows was one, but it's not. It's not an A24 film. It's done by
Yeah,
somebody else.
who did It Follows? Who was the studio with
I
that
don't
one?
remember. I can't
Yeah.
remember who it was, but I was thinking for
It's got
somewhere.
that vibe. It has that A24 vibe to it, certainly.
Yes, I think. I was trying to think. I can't remember what the other one was. I don't remember, but yeah. So A24 is one that is hard for me. I will never. I can tell you this. I will never pay to see an A24 movie because the risk of me not liking it is too high.
Yeah.
But Saint Maud, I loved it. Did you watch Midnight Mass?
Yeah, I've seen
Okay.
I've actually seen part of Midnight Mass, and I have not seen all of Midnight Mass, but
Oh,
yes,
it's yeah. So Midnight Mass is a show about people. I mean, it
yeah.
in that sense, that's what it is, which I love. I'm absolutely good with that.
Well,
So
I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan
Mike Flanagan.
because that's the kind of movie that he makes, and that's the kind of TV show that he makes. That's why I
Yes.
love The Haunting of Hill House too, is because it is a
Yes.
show about those people
Yeah.
with horror elements that blend into it.
Yeah. And then the other one, Bly Manor, is a love story.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
it's so beautifully done, and it's and I love that ending scene when she says that. She goes, "It's really not a ghost story; it's a love story." And I'm just like fan, fan in my eyes, and I'm like,
Oh my
"Damn it!"
god, the two I forget the characters' names. Uh Rahul Kohli, I think is how you say his name, the actor,
Mhm.
and the other woman who's in that movie that or in
Yeah.
that show, their love story and the fact that it doesn't get to happen is one of those top moments for me of like, I will never forgive you for this, filmmaker.
I know that one was hard, and I think too, like even after everything that the I don't know, I can't remember anybody's name today. Even after the lesbian couple, like after they have like their time together, you keep waiting for this reprieve, and it like never comes. Like they never get a break to just
yeah. And at that point, you're just waiting for the shoe to drop. Just get it over with, Mike. But he never gets it over with.
Kill them both and I don't know, do whatever you're going to do and pull the Band-Aid off. Yeah. And then it's like, but that final scene, spoiler alert, when she leaves the door open, I was just like, my heart was like I cried like the whole last episode. I was like an emotional mess.
It's a beautiful show.
It was very well done. I liked it.
And I think that a lot of really good horror is something else with horror, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's a mix of two things. I did want to pitch your book one more time before we get ready to go.
That was very kind.
Yeah. So this is the book. Those We Left Behind and Other Sacrifices. I was very fortunate enough to be able to still get a signed one, and it came with like a cute little bookmark, which I'm going to use for this book. It's an anthology story, or an anthology book rather, and it's got phenomenal stories. If you're not familiar with Brandon's work, I do highly recommend it. I like it a lot. I was very excited to have this to read Tea Party out of. Like I was so excited. I was like, oh, and I get to read it out of my like my real one, and like So anyway. And I'm gonna when this video goes up, I'm gonna link like all of your stuff, like your socials, your website, and where to find your stories.
Cool. Well, thank you for doing that, and thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation. I've been, oh my gosh, I've been kind of jealously watching your top 5 horror movie videos come out, and I'm like, oh man, I'd do one of those. But it's been really good to get to chat with you about this. I think this is a really good conversation. And thank you so much for having read my book and reading my story on your show. I mean, you're a big proponent, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I am. And you can come and talk about anything you want anytime. You just got to let me know. We'll do it. We'll do a 5 influential, because I'm always intrigued, especially after having read, some of the stories, a few specific ones kind of thing in my mind. I'm like, I would love to know like what your influential horror would look like. So yeah, we'll do it. We'll talk about it. I'm like, all right, those conversations have been great. So I'm all for it.
Right on. Well, let's set something up. But cool. Thank you again. This has been a blast.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too.
So that was my conversation with Brandon Applegate. He's awesome. I do highly recommend his book. I was not blowing smoke just because he was on camera with me. I really did love his stories. He's got a very, very big gift of storytelling. I love the way he writes. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode of What is Horror? Lots of tangents, lots of fun conversation. Love talking horror with pretty much anybody. But this was a fun conversation for sure. So thank you guys again for checking this episode out. Have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you in the next one.